gospel artist and author and many, many things as well. We also do have Gabriel Muthuma, who is a political and governance expert. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed. So maybe I'll begin with Reuben before Gabriel, you come into this conversation, because for a very long time we've talked about the BBI and how this is sort of meant to build the bridges that we want to. But according to Reuben, we had a conversation yesterday, and he says BBI is not the solution to the issues that we're facing as a country. That as a country, we lack values. Reuben.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it is not the solution. I would say it's the cart before the horse. And primarily because my argument is in any system, like if you're looking at a computer, you have the software and you have the hardware. And so what's going on is that we're dealing with the hardware. And we have a runaway software that is infecting every system.
Right.
My argument is that before we talk about everything that is on the table now and in the rallies, that we need to go back to who we are, and more so who we have become.
Right.
Because whatever drives this nation is greed, corruption, mistrust, tribalism. You can go on. The list is huge. And these are just manifestations of a more serious problem that is sitting at the heart of who we are as a people. It's very easy to blame politicians. It's very easy to blame people, professionals. You're not doing this, and some of them have their hands tied, and some of them are doing everything to stop all the good efforts that are going on in the country. So it's not everyone in Kenya that is rotten and gone down the drain.
Right.
But I'm saying we need to go back to the value building initiative.
Right.
Because if we build that, then we'll be able to get where we need to go faster and more effectively. If we don't do that, we'll find that like the animals that build this huge tower, you get to the top and you need one more stone to complete the building, and you begin to suggest, let's pull down the foundation stone.
Right.
So that's what has happened. We have forgotten who we are. Limited people, first of all, who need God's guidance, and God's value system that He's put in our hearts, the right and wrong. And then we've also forgotten that people come first. So you have a few people that are living above the law. That was my argument yesterday. And you have the bulk of people living below the law.
Right.
So those above the law are pretty much the ones pushing for all these changes.
Right.
And when you look at it, you realize it's not about the ordinary person. It's really about allocation of seats. It's about whipping 2022 rhetoric. It's about positioning. And so there's a busy machine that's going on, but the foundations have been neglected. And I'm saying we need to go right back to the drawing board that can explain why, for example, pens in a bank are tied to a chain. We don't like calling ourselves thieves, but that's what it means, that the pen will go. And we need to go back to, why we still have tribal animosity every 5 years, every time we go to election.
Right.
And we need to address all the corruption issues. Why, why we're making posterity poorer and poorer and sending our children into debt by reckless borrowing.
Right.
So what I'm proposing is a national conversation on values.
All right.
Yeah.
And Gabriel, even as you come into that, and of course, taking a look at where Reuben is coming from, talking about values, talking about laying out a foundation for the country in order to move forward. Is the BBI really going to sort of solve that in any way whatsoever?
See, Zainab, and I'll repeat, there's something I've said before, and I think I'll repeat it again. BBI contains some great elements within it. But still, we need to discuss about its implementation. And I think what is happening now through the town hall meetings is where people are now starting to converse. You've seen so many people coming out with their own ailments within their specific counties or areas of representation, where they say, you know what, this is something that has been ailing us for far too long, and we hope that BBI will be able to address it. So if you look at Kenya, the map of Kenya, it will tell you that there is something that has not been going right. All right? And these necessarily, I think it is so demarcated between counties. The issues that you find within a given county is probably not the very same thing that you find within another county. And that is why BBI was very good when it suggested a national conversation. And it's my prayer and it's my hope that national conversation will bring about something that the Kenyan society can be grateful for. If it's not hijacked by the politicians, as the president was wary about, I think finally we may be able to get a document that we sit down and ask, is this really how we want to be governed? And if it's able to produce such a report in the final run, then I think Kenyans will be, will actually have seen the benefits of BBI. But there's something that Reuben has said, which I think brings a lot of importance into the table, and that is our values. How do we ignite or reignite our value system again? Because we've lost it. When it comes to values, that's clear, we've lost it. And I think we need to go back in time and ask, back in the day, how our forefathers, lived. What kind of values did they have then? You used to remember the saying that said, it takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
Those are some of the things that we grew up knowing. You could be disciplined back in the day by any person in the village. There were certain values that were inflicted at a very tender age. And those values, as we came now to what you would call the neo lifestyle, they were eroded. So are these the values that we need to go back to? Some may actually be old-fashioned, but what are the critical values that still stand till today? Things like honesty, things like loving your neighbor, things like having unity and the place where you're living. I mean, this, I don't believe, Zainab, will be values that will go away with time. They are the core elements that make us human. They qualify us to be human instead of animals. When I see there's a need somewhere, and I know that I'm able to come in and assist or help in that need, then I need to be counted on. But nowadays, when, and half of the time we've blamed it on the economy or, how the lifestyle has changed. But I still believe there is a set of values that made us Kenya. You may recall just the other day we were talking about the passing of the late president and the philosophies that he believed in. They were three philosophies, but at the very core: peace, love, and unity. They are still the very same things we are chasing today, even through BBI.
Oh, through all these years.
Yeah, but I think we need to, if we look too far back in time, everybody sort of disappears in the wings.
Correct.
There are two things that I think as a nation we must never lose sight of.
Right.
And one is our history. And the second one is law, the rule of law. For our history, if we just pushed us back as independence, all of us had this particular agreement. Our leaders knew they wanted to eradicate poverty. They wanted to eradicate ignorance. They wanted to eradicate disease. So you always knew that anyone coming into power was hinged on those three agenda. Now, it's like just about 50 years down the line, and we're still dealing with the same issues. It means that, something in the foundation of this nation did not go right. That our leaders betrayed the initial agenda. And you see, those three things focused on the common person, the you and me. And like I said to you yesterday, if everyone is going ahead and prospering and the neighbor around you is not, you'll never have peace. So a government, a system, a structure that leaves behind the masses, the population, the ordinary mwananchi, will have no people to lead.
Right.
because people will always revolt against a system that betrays them. And so we are right back to maybe a little worse situation than when we gained independence, where we wanted freedom from the colonizers, the foreign powers that came here and took all of our systems and made us slave. Now we are being colonized and mistreated by our very own people, who have taken the position of the colonial master and now are doing worse. And it feels worse because they are part of us. So the second thing is law. We all agree that law is good, but law is only as good as we respect it. If some people respect the law and some don't, there is no need for law whatsoever. If I just give a case, a scenario of, a respectable person going to, a club and, shoots a DJ, just to take that as an example.
Right.
The problem is not that the shooting takes place. The problem is how we deal with that. Because our value system will inform how we deal with that. And the law will help us to implement our values. So we expected that justice will be meted. It wasn't. And so when you see someone back in, in the rallies, and it's like, people clamoring for him to speak, and you see a judge, mock justice, we are asking the question, so who should respect the law? Who?
All right.
So you find people in office, we know they have stolen. We know that something has gone wrong. We know that money is missing. We know projects were, became elephant projects, white elephant projects. We know that, for example, the Jubilee government set out to, to really help the youth by putting out all these, the NYS program.
So can we say as Kenyans we are gullible? Or where you say we lack values, are we also gullible?
Gullibility is a cheap way to go.
Right.
Because the bulk of Kenyans I talk to are angry. The issue is we find ourselves handcuffed by people who take advantage. You impoverish someone and then use the impoverishment to get forward, to move forward.
Okay.
So we are really, in a sense, I think King Kaka put it well, there is a sense of ignorance, kuna ujinga fulani, but especially when it comes to 2022, you will see the same thing happen. But I think there is enough voice right now, and this is what I would want, especially anyone in leadership to know, that you cannot take advantage of people forever. And we've learned from other countries that it doesn't happen.
All right.
And so I'm basically just saying, let's return to values, or let's just sound the warning, it will not be business as usual. Kenyans are fed up.
But, despite all that, Gabriel, I think Kenyans have been fed up for quite some time. But here we are, hoping and praying that whatever has been put on the table is a solution for some of the issues that we're facing as a country.
Right.
So what way forward, really?
But you see, Zainab, there's also something else, and to agree, in a larger part with what Reuben has said, there's a major part that comes from the changes that we are talking about. The major part, the realization of that change, comes first of all from within. It must be me and you who want the change that we seek. We must look for it. We must understand why we are looking for that change, and then we must see how do we impose that change in society.
Right.
So the question that you asked, and I know probably Reuben, you would have liked to use a more comfortable name, I would still say we are gullible to an extent. And why we are gullible to an extent is because we know that which needs to be done. We know that which is right. Even when it comes to electing our leaders. The question is, what happens when we get into that booth? All right? What do we put as the top echelon of electing that leader? And I'm not talking about, you know, probably the top leadership or the mid leadership. No, I'm talking from way down there, machinani. Why am I electing this person? Why am I electing this woman representative? Why am I electing this governor? What is in it? Do they understand me? Do they understand solutions that lie within my locale? Or is it because this is somebody who has just played the part, enacted the part that I'm giving him my value? Is it somebody who just showed up because he wanted to be somebody in society and somebody who has the means and the money to just, you know, throw money around and get elected? Not because he wants to be a leader, no, because he wants to serve a certain position in society. And I think the more we start understanding why we need proper and upright leadership is when we understand the kind of change we need. And that's why I'm saying for us to change, it must first of all come from within before it is reflected from without.
Right.
You see, historically you may choose to go very far to start understanding how people laid their foundation. The biggest democracy that we all talk about is, of course, the United States of America. And in July, you know, 4th July, 1776, when you had the likes of Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and the other, I think there were two other gentlemen, when they sat down to craft and author the Declaration of Independence, therein was a very critical phrase. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. That is where they started. And so if we get a foundation like that, that all Kenyans, regardless of tribe, orientation, or whatever they subscribe to, are equal in the eyes of law and in the eyes of society, we put that as a permanent foundation for everything else that comes in is based on that. And we hold those fervent truths to be a reality. Zainab, I tell you, the change that we are expecting may start occurring. Because I was telling you the other day, what a child in Turkana is looking for probably is a kind of lifestyle that child, same government, same country, is getting in Central Province. The fact that they want to go into a classroom, that they're able to learn, that they're able to get an education, that the teacher will come without fearing for his or her life because they are very far from home, that they are able to get the very same curriculum that is being taught in this school and the other school, that when they walk to a health center run by the county or by the government, they are able to get the very same medication and very same treatment like any other child in Nairobi. You will start seeing the change that we are yearning for. And it is not hard. And you know, half of the time we think, oh, this is the presidency. No, it has got nothing to do with it. Yes, there is an element of direction that must come from that big office, but our counties now must be areas and incubators for solutions, failure to which we will be lost.
All right, you talk about that, and of course you talk about the much needed change. And of course this is something that all Kenyans are yearning for. But then we have what we might call the institutionalization of impunity. You talk about county governments coming out to start that change from that grassroots level. But here we have governors who are facing impeachment. Why? Because they are found in graft-related cases, Reuben.
Yeah, that's what my article was all about. That software has become a virus. Now, every software is a virus. I mean, every virus is a software. But right. Let's go it this way. I would not stick it at law. What has really gone wrong, according to me, is that we have forgotten we are all made equal by God.
Right.
And I know when I begin to talk about God, some people switch off. until you realize that we don't bring ourselves here.
Correct.
And life is short. And so every appointment that is given to us, whether in government or in the private sector, is really something of a lending. You know, you're lent an opportunity to serve. You're given a chance for 5 or 10 years or whatever the time. And if we forget that life is alone and that time is limited and that there are other people who could serve where we are, once we forget that, then we live with impunity. We think we can step on people. We are the only people. We are the only ones who know. We are the only smart ones, the more deserving, and so on. That's how Kenyans are living today. If you're given a position, you begin to think what you can get for yourself out of that position, and not so much the people that you're serving. And if we go that way, then the fear of God is actually not in us. We imagine that we are invincible. We cannot be touched. So we need to go back to the drawing board. You know, how long are we here? How short is our lives? Secondly, I really think God has put in the heart of a person a conscience, you know, right and wrong. And to the least person, even a child knows if you take away the bottle, you're doing something unjust, you know. So you need to go back to that conscience. Where did the conscience of Kenya go? Where, you know, somebody...
Do you believe we've lost it? Do you believe we've lost our conscience?
Completely. You know, the religious leaders need to speak louder. Parents need to do a little bit more than leave you know, their children in the hands of teachers and, you know, media. I really think we've lost it completely, and we need to ask the question: does God need to bring a megaphone, you know, to rouse our deaf ears, you know? And indulge me to say that sometimes, indeed, God shouts in our pain, and so you see a locust invasion, it can bring a nation down. He spoke about a superpower like the USA. The USA is brought down by storms, the acts of nature, we call them. This is the acts of God. And so I believe that God is speaking to us. I believe that we need to open our ears. And you see, when I see a rally after rally, rally after rally, and the locusts are about to destroy our food security, I think it's a wake-up call.
All right.
And we should have conversations around the people, the needs of the people, not so much, you know, the individual interests and who will get what when.
All right. But despite all that, I mean, Gabriel, we have President Uhuru Kenyatta here, and we have ODM leader Raila Odinga, who was then probably an opposition leader, and they came together to build these bridges that we're seeing right now, and they're going across the country, you know, seeking views from Kenyans and saying, but it appears all this thing has been lost amid the political rhetoric that we're witnessing. Just yesterday, where you had Deputy President William Ruto saying, we're going to stop the reggae if some of these issues that have been raised during these rallies are more of a divisive issue than what was purposely meant for in the very beginning. Like, for example, the Narok senator and some of the remarks that he made.
You know, Zainab, you've actually put something that is actually quite truthful, and something that has been happening, and many people are starting to ask the original objective of BBI. And it's gotten to a point where now people are starting to ask, are we heading in the right direction? You may recall some time back when the president was setting out the commission, and somewhere in Nakuru, I think he spoke and pronounced himself to the very same thing of not allowing this process to be hijacked by politicians. From day one, I think the president had been concerned about BBI, the beauty about the entire initiative being hijacked by politicians. And Zainab, you know our politicians very well. If there is a place where it will give them political mileage, they'll be on it, like, you know, like nobody's business.
Right.
And I believe this is what they have done. Many are coming in not because they like the initiative, but because they want to gain mileage. And for the common mwananchi out there, those are the people they need to be wary of. It is therefore for that reason that I would request and beseech those who, you know, really want to understand a document like BBI. Like I told you last time, you may not agree with many things or some of the things that are within BBI, but that does not cloud the fact that that initiative has some great things that can propel this country to greatness. So if we are to look at that document critically and have a national conversation about it, we will find out how we can deal with the things that ails us. Implementation is another ball game altogether.
Right.
But we will be able to say, guys, let us sit down, let us have this conversation. Look, the things that we're talking about, corruption right now,
Right.
graft. I've told you more than once, even though BBI offers a platform of actually dealing with this graft and how we are able to go about actually to implement ways on dealing with graft. And I've told you, to me, graft is a vicious cycle of destruction. And it will continue being, because you do not understand it from the preset. When it sets out, and I'll give you a very good example, a contractor has come and won a tender within the local government or the national government, and they've used their corrupt dealings and who they know to come in and get that deal. They go back to where they're supposed to implement this project, and they do a shoddy job. Guess what happens next? That same governor or that same person who issued that certificate and gave business to this individual comes to that very job that has been done shoddily and has an accident. He loses his life. The vicious cycle of destruction continues. Or if it's not him per se, their children. Right? And this, we've seen it repeatedly happen within our realm of development.
And Gabriel, maybe one of the other issues probably that has also come out from this conversation is the fact that there has not been any kind of accountability from those in position. For example, and I think what Reuben had talked about yesterday was the issue of the children who died in the Kaka Mega primary school, you know, the buildings that keep collapsing in the country, but then there's really no one who's ever taken responsibility for some of this.
Zainab, you know the health of a society by how they respond to tragedy and to the good times. What my brother here is talking about, the political snatching of the process, has brought a lot of questions my way. For example, I assume we have a steering committee that is supposed to direct our discussions on BBI. So personally, what I expected would be like town hall meetings where people can sit and give to the committee their views about where we need to go. Once you cascade and you know, escalate the whole thing into political rallies, then what does the average Kenyan understand of political rallies? Campaigns, elections. So the whole thing is already lost, because now we can't sit down and talk about where we need to go. But secondly, even all that we are talking about, whether we go the value system or we go the BBI direction, we already have a lot of provisions in the Constitution. So my number one question is, how much of the Constitution have we implemented to be able to even get to, you know, break this down to a claim for a referendum and so on. So Chapter 10 of the Constitution gives us a very good foundation for values. Chapter 6, Article 10, and then Chapter 6 give us a very good foundation for values. If we are going to talk about a referendum, it should really be something of a national interest after we have exhausted everything constitutional. Now, regarding the hijack of the process, what has happened is then because the politicians and their rhetoric know how to harness tribal, sentiments, we are going to have that more and more. And what we are then going to end up with is move from an election to another 4 years of electioneering. In other words, we stay in a state of elections. And there are other things we need to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Gabriel, you were also adding on to that particular point.
Yeah. When I said, you know, we had structured when you started out. And even today, I still believe you still have town hall meetings, which to me, in my own view, should be emphasized, because it is a structured discussion where you have a group, you know, or individuals who are able to come and air their views in these town hall meetings, and at least they are able to get direction. If it is something which is, you know, which is already there in law, you're able to be told how to go about it within the existing structures. So I think, Zainab, as we move along, I am worried, just like the president was, when he raised the concern that he hopes this great initiative is not hijacked by politicians. So I think as we move into these county rallies that they are calling, and now we've gone back to the rhetoric where we've seen even fist fights emanating from these political rallies. My worry is that BBI now is going to be watered down.
It's already watered down.
Yes, to these political rallies. Albeit the fact it's a great initiative. When we see fist fights in Garissa, I am concerned. I'm like, is that the picture now that is going to be shown on BBI? Yet, you still have structured dialogues that are continuing in town halls. What must we step up?
Should we have this conversation devoid or without the politicians spearheading this particular process, and who would be helping us spearhead this
Zainab, like Reuben has said, there is a committee of experts.
Right.
And to me, they are the ones who should take the first step initiative. They'll be like the first responders.
Right.
They should be the ones saying, stop.
Exactly.
Let's go back to where this thing started.
I agree. The main objective of BBI should not be watered down by political rallies. Yeah, it would be a major disservice to both the president and Honorable Raila Odinga if we went back now to championing where everybody is coming into on the stage and saying these people or this person must not be allowed, or, you know, we are going to lose it. So I think we need to go back to the basic of the BBI initiative and, you know, cement it to the task force or the committee that it was given to. Let us have a national conversation. Let's read the document. Let us understand what it stipulates. And finally, as a society, let us say these are the things that are ailing Kenya as a community. How do we move? Yeah. How are we able to progress as
and that's
Kenyans?
For me where my $1 million question is, and that is in terms of sheer priorities. You know, let's just talk, you know, we are all Kenyans, we are all here, this is our country. If you were to pit BBI against, let's say, slaying the corruption dragon, why would we spend energies on BBI? Because corruption, if you don't take care of corruption, BBI will end up being a corrupt deal. And so we need to go back and say, what are our real priorities? What would make this country move faster for everybody? I think it is really the very basics. Resources, amenities. Let's talk about how our children go to school. Let's talk about food security. I was really impressed with the Big Four agenda. What happened to the Big Four agenda? And then I think I need to mention very openly here that personally I told my brother here, I speak for the bush. So let me speak for the bush here. You know, we cannot have a runaway train moving on so fast to nowhere when you have, everything falling off, we have unanswered questions as ordinary citizens. Why? Okay, where are our Huduma numbers? What was that? Why did we need it in a year when we were going to actually have the census? Why not integrate? Why spend all these billions several times over? So we are asking questions that nobody wants to answer and is telling us instead that reggae will never stop. Now, what happened to NYS money? What happens to Aror and, Kimwaror and
the dams?
The dams.
Right.
What happens to, Galala?
So a lot of questions that are yet
Yes, we
to be
have many
answered
questions, and we need answers. We can't keep moving without answers. And you can only respect a system that respects you.
Right. You talked about, yesterday you talked about Kenyans having to take the blame for the leaders that we have in position, for the leaders that we elect in those particular positions.
Yes and no. Yes, on the large, because we get the leaders we deserve. We are the ones who elect them. Although I would say no, because some of them impose themselves on us. And some are appointed. We have a bloated government, no doubt. And these are some of the issues that we would have discussed at the town halls. Now, what is the way forward? For me, this is my biggest worry. We have a runaway train. We have to stop. Something has to give, because we cannot go to 2022 like this. It is dangerous, absolutely dangerous. And somebody has got to tell a politician somewhere, stop this far and no farther. And I would challenge the steering committee, the BBI steering committee, to come out as responsible appointed officers that have our interests in mind, to stop this nonsense and get us talking. Get us talking. Gather us at a university or at a school, at a town hall. Let's issue our thoughts on where we need to go as a nation.
Right.
But the political rallies must stop.
Right.
Really.
But some would argue, Gabriel, that those political rallies are crucial for the dissemination of the contents of what they want Kenyans to.
No.
You see,
not crucial.
When the president said have a national conversation on these things,
Right.
Remember, if you are to look for the initial champions, or the people who are championing that document,
Right.
You have two great politicians who sat down and asked, how do we sort some of the mess that this country finds itself? And also, how do we solve this this issue, this rhythm of every 5 years, this country comes to almost a brink of war.
That's a critical question.
All right? So they sat down to look at major issues that were concerning this nation. And like Reuben has said, indeed it is, and it remains a very critical question. So how do we sort this thing? What they were telling us, both the president and the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, they were saying, me and you don't have the solutions, but Kenyans do. Let us engage them. Let us give them the space to debate. Let us give them the solution.
They go wrong, because
let us give them the solution of telling us how they would want. We are at the government level. What does private sector have to say about this? What does the religious leaders have to say about this? They are not religious leaders. They are politicians. What do Mama Mboga have to say about this issue of our economy coming to an end every 3 years? Or jump-starting our economy? What does these other various groups in this country have to say? And so BBI came and we started having this national conversation. But now it's being overtaken by rallies and other sideshows. So the committee of experts that have been given this mandate, I'll say like Reuben is saying, they need to come out clearly and now arrest this situation
before.
that can, before it becomes a runaway problem. So
I was saying that's where they went wrong, because every time you say Kenyans have a problem, Kenyans need to speak. If we exempt ourselves from the definition of Kenyans, we
Right.
begin to get it wrong. I think our leaders should be Kenyans first.
Correct.
In the sense that I don't want to sit there and say, we do not have the answers. We do, because we are Kenyans. So what is my gut feeling, either as a president or prime minister, former prime minister, or as a CS? What's my gut feeling about Mwananchi? Because if we're thinking about Mwananchi, we'll get it right. If we're thinking about this monster called Kenya, that's an abstract thing. Let's talk about, you know, Wajiro and Akoth somewhere. That if we are going to talk about anything that doesn't concern them, throw it out.
True.
Because we are in leadership to lead people, not rocks. And so I would say honorably to the president, to the former prime minister, to Deputy William Ruto, to all in government, please, I beg you, redefine what leadership is. It's about service. It's about servant, you know, being able to give services to the people. It's not about where we go as a monster entity called Kenya. Kenya is people. And as long as we are not taking people along, we have nobody to lead.
All right, Gabe, and even with that, I remember right before the funeral, and of course before the death of retired President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi and the burial and everything, so we had a section of the politicians who came out to say, we want to change the narrative in which the BBI course is taking. And, you know, led by Kipchumba Murkomen, the senator. And they said, you know, from now on, we will be taking in that initiative as well as a second, or as a parallel BBI, you know, team going to the ground and everything. So then I guess they were justified in saying that this entire process was already watered down by the political rhetoric in the country.
You see, we cannot fail to say or to air these major concerns that the president had. And for a good reason. You know, the president has a bird's eye view of the political machination or the political mechanism in the country. And for him to have, you know, more than once or twice raised the concern about the hijacking of BBI by politicians, it's like he saw or he understood what a Kenyan politician thinks. And you see, when you give them a platform, half of them will disseminate ignorance. And probably this is what we are going through right now. Many people, when they hear a politician talking on the stage, when you hear a senator or a governor holding a microphone in some rally, and whatever the kind of political rhetoric that they will disseminate, you think that is what BBI is, but that's not the truth. Half of the time, these people have their own political innuendos.
Right.
What some of the chapters and some of the ideas that come out of BBI, when they talk about chronism, I want people to understand what that is talking, you know, what the whole issue about chronism is detailed upon.
Right.
When they talk about the failure for meritocracy, I want Kenyans to understand what you know, the containments of BBI are talking about. The issue about kleptocracy, people must understand these things. And these are not subjects that can be discussed in political rallies. Half of these politicians don't even understand what those issues are. So Zainab, I think we need to go back to the basic of where, or the foundation of BBI.
All right.
And
of course, as even as your closing remarks.
And I think, to me, I think it needs a new guide, if I may put it that way. And most importantly, the committee of experts, the people who are mandated to steer the BBI. I think we need to tone down on politics. Tone down on politics and allow the good elements of BBI to come out. Let people discuss those great ideas. Let people have that conversation,
Right.
and let it stand to be what we've always thought BBI was going to bring, or bring about, the brilliant and the great national conversation. Failure to which I'm just afraid. I'm just afraid that these political rallies are going to lead to something else.
Right.
And before you say cut and a half, BBI will have been watered down.
Right. Reuben, your closing remarks.
Yeah, two things. We need to return to God. That I cannot overemphasize. Let's never imagine that we are here forever. Life is short. Let's use our spaces and privileges and opportunities right, or God will stop us.
Right.
Secondly, 3 important things about BBI. I think it's certainly a misplaced priority, time-wise. And so if I had one thing to tell Kenyans today, it would be that our solution lies in 3 important things. 1, priorities. 2, priorities. And 3, priorities.
Indeed. And I think that's a fantastic place to end. Would you like to add anything extra to that?
I'm done.
I'm done. And I think we're done for now on AM Live Plus. Thank you so much, Reuben Kagame, social